Hi, today I'm going to be talking about how I used universal design for learning to plan a lesson for my 8th grade students on volume. Specifically, we were working on the volume of cylinders, cones, and spheres. I created 4 stations for students to work at. They were randomly grouped, and it was a good mix of collaborative and individual work. Students were randomly sent to start at one station. They were instructed that they absolutely could and should work together, but once they were done at a station, they were able to get up and move to the next one without waiting for the group. At station 1, I was trying to help students understand the difference between surface area and volume. Students used one standard printer piece of paper to create 2 different cylinders, one tall and one wide. They used mini marshmallows to illustrate the idea of volume and filling something, and they were able to realize that they had different volumes despite being the same size sheet of paper with the same surface area. Station 2 is kind of a classic word problem. Students were trying to figure out how many ice cream cones could fit in a cooler. At station 3, students had real life objects like a basketball, a tennis ball, and they were using tape measures to find circumference, derive the radius, and then find the volume of these real spheres. Station 4 was more procedural practice, so students were given different formulas, different measures, and they had to calculate volume. This was mostly to practice calculator skills, so whether it was the TI-84 or their cell phone calculator, learning how to use those properly and effectively. To plan with UDL, you always want to think about your students' strengths. In this particular class, the students are very willing to ask questions, whether it's of each other or me. They work well in random grouping so that they can be tossed together and work well with whoever they're seated with. They enjoy hands-on activities, and they do have varied skill sets. Some prefer procedural work, and some prefer the big idea, big picture, more conceptual or experimental activities. UDL checkpoints that this addresses, this activity. In terms of representation, I thought it was good about highlighting the big ideas by playing with volume in so many different ways and kind of always going back to the idea of it's rooted in the circle. I thought students were able to understand it a little bit better. I thought in the same vein, it helped maximize transfer and generalization, the idea where cylinder, cone, sphere, it's all rooted in the circle. For action and expression, I felt that students, through working together, working through different levels of rigor, working with me and independently, I was able to kind of graduate that level of support and build fluencies. For engagement, so much of this was hands-on in a way that we don't normally get to do in class, so that definitely optimized authenticity and value for them. And the group work, being able to work with whoever was there, fostered collaboration. In terms of barriers or student weaknesses, some students definitely tend to give up quickly, especially when in a group setting. They know someone else will take the lead and they can kind of hang back. Some of my students struggle with the big picture conceptual ideas, and calculator usage tends to be an issue once we get to the volume unit. Students want to use the pi button when 3.14 is more appropriate. They want to do all the workout on a calculator without doing anything on paper, and they get a little bit lost. So there's lots of things I wanted to try and address with this lesson. In terms of UDL checkpoints, I thought that having pictures and the formula and an example and some text helped support decoding. We had a do now that talked about the different formulas being rooted in the circle's area formula, pi r squared. So that helped activate background knowledge and get them ready for working with this in different representations. Station 4 optimized access to calculators, and the goal there really was to learn how to properly use them and support them with that tool. And then in terms of enhancing capacity for monitoring progress, the fact that I encouraged students to leave the group when they were ready and move to the next station, they did have to check in with me first, but that helped them kind of keep moving, address when they were successful, when they needed some help in order to be ready to keep moving. For engagement, varied demands and resources to optimize challenge, I thought this was huge. There was different strengths at play here, different levels of challenge, levels of rigor, depending on the station. So students were able to kind of find where they shone, find where they struggled, and kind of work through that. So it worked out very well. In general, when thinking about UDL in the classroom and my classroom in particular, it's something I try to and I'm going to continue to strive to incorporate. I love that it incorporates students' strengths and weaknesses. I found that all too often I focus on one or the other and try and address it in a lesson when there's so much to work with both. I think it helps make the lessons engaging and meaningful. You can ensure that all students are able to access the lesson and really work with the material and form an understanding that's more meaningful to them and is going to impact them and stay with them. In terms of my own planning, I think it encourages creativity. To keep all of this in mind and try and plan a lesson that's all encompassing encourages me to be more creative and think more creatively.